Welcome back. This is part two of the Field of ECE. We really should say the profession of ECE. Maybe you've seen this book. We call it, in our department, we call it the tree book for obvious reasons. This is the Washington State Early Learning and Development Guidelines, and I just want you to be advised that you may not be able to find this in print right now because with the changeover from the Department of Early Learning to the Department of Children, Youth, and Families, they are rebranding this book. Really, they're just changing this front cover. If you were to zoom in, you could see that the Dell logo is still there. I was a student teacher in 2004 when these guidelines were first coming into public light, and I worked with an early learning program that at the time my full-time employment was working for an early learning program where the director was one of the folks on the board or the committee that helped develop these. And so she went around to area childcare centers, preschool programs, Head Starts and ECAPs, and kindergarten teachers and developmental kindergarten teachers and special ed preschool teachers and said, here's a draft, tell me what you think. And it was really interesting because I remember being at my student teaching placement and my boss from my everyday job comes in and she's like, oh, this is where you're doing your student teaching? And I said, yes, this is where I'm doing my student teaching. Oh, well, I'm here to talk to your mentor teacher about these guidelines. And she shared them with me, and I still remember. And that was in 2004. And then in 2008, they were updated because, as you know, with any text like this, it's a living document that needs review and revision. And then in 2012, it was revised again, and now it's 2021, and we are revising it once again. I do have these as a PDF format. The last change back in 2012 happened because we had parents and community members saying, you know, if this is really for the entire community, this language needs to be parent-focused and more inclusive of cultural diversity. And so we brought to the forefront those ideas and really changed the language to be more parent and family friendly and more representative of the communities and cultures across Washington State. And you'll find that many states have developed early learning and development guidelines as part of not only the Race to the Top Early Learning Challenge Fund, but just as a process of professionalizing the field. And Washington State was really one of the leaders in this process. And so you'll see that many other states have modeled their early learning and development guidelines after Washington State. What do these do for us? This gives us a common language across the profession of the skills and abilities that young children can have throughout their early childhood development. And they are organized in a way that helps us understand the progression and trajectory of development from birth to grade 3 or the end of age 8. It helps parents and professionals understand how to support children's development. It's research-based. It has practical strategies. If you were to look at this book, if you have this book, if you open it up to any section, you'll see that the left-hand side says things children may be able to do, and then the right-hand column says ways to support them, or something like that, things to do at home to support and encourage development. They're really, really parent-friendly, and we use them. I use them when I teach the curriculum development class, our language and literacy class, my math and science class, to help develop lesson plans, honestly. If it's going to tell you, all right, if my target group are 4-year-olds, here are some things in language and literacy that 4-year-olds should know and be able to do, so I'm going to target my lesson around that language, and here are some ideas, and I have it right there, and I use it to create a lesson plan. It's great. So this might have changed since this presentation was developed. For our program, if you are going to continue on, if this class, if you are just taking this class as a social science distribution to get your 5 credits for social science and you're not in the ECE program, this isn't going to make a whole lot of sense to you. But if you're in this program because you want to get your associate's degree in early childhood education or that initial certificate, this is something you will have to do. You'll have to create a portable background check through the merit system, and I'm going to walk you through how to do that, if not in this presentation, in next week. But we used to have these, this is some of the money from the Race to the Top Early Learning Challenge grant, but we used to have this career lattice where you could apply for an award. Sorry, I'm pitching my nose, so I'm going to sneeze. And it started off, if you did the 30 hours child care basic, you could get $150. If you complete it, then if you complete the initial certificate or your CDA, you can apply for another $150. And it builds. So if you get your state short certificate, another $150, all the way through a master's degree, where if you apply, if you've worked your way through this, or if you've had your master's degree in early childhood education, you can apply for this $500, and it's yours to do whatever you want with. This may have run out since this was developed, but isn't that kind of amazing? An incentive to further your education? All right, so this week you're going to read a document about affordability, quality, and compensation, and we call this the trilemma, and you could probably intuitively kind of figure out why, just thinking back to the first presentation. We know that our early childhood professionals are some of the most undervalued and underpaid professionals in our education system, right? They don't make the same that a K-12 teacher makes, but they do equivalent work. The requirements for preparation are not the same as K-12, right? If I'm going to be a K-12 teacher, I have to have a bachelor's degree and endorsements in the appropriate areas. And so our Bachelor's of Applied Science and Teaching at Pierce College offers endorsement in early childhood education and early childhood special education, and that certificates our graduates to work in those fields. Unfortunately, the same is not true for early childhood programs birth to age 5. Folks, there's not a lot of requirements past having your high school diploma. That's changing. Some programs are now beginning to require folks to have that initial certificate if they want to be an assistant teacher, the state certificate if they want to be a lead teacher, the associate's degree for folks who want to be a director. This is all just starting to change, but there's no consistency across the profession. Then when we think about affordability, it is not cheap to send your child to childcare. I remember being a young mom. I worked for ECAP, and I was making, oh heavens me, $14 an hour, which back in the day was not a horrible wage, but it wasn't enough to provide for my family. So my husband also worked, but he was making $13 an hour working for Comcast. No, I did not make $14. I think I was making $11.25 as a lead teacher, and my husband was making $13 an hour working for Comcast, and we could not afford to send our children to childcare or to preschool, and we did not qualify for programs like Head Start or ECAP because we made too much money. And so we did the next best thing, and we sent our children for the first 2 years of Danny's life to my parents, and then my dad got sick and passed away, and so then I asked a friend to watch my kids while I was at work, and I was paying her like practically nothing, which is awful, right? But that was the dilemma that I was in. And for folks who want high quality, that high quality preschool is going to cost more because we don't have, it's not public, it's not like a public education, right? Those high quality programs are probably paying their teachers more, right? And so that means that the tuition has to be higher if they're going to pay their teachers better. So there is a competitive wage out there if you're searching for it. And that compensation, that wage, and access to benefits, if you're paying your teachers better, tuition's going to be higher, but the quality is also going to be better. And I know this sounds awful, but this is the reality of the profession. And so it really is a trilemma. Parents cannot necessarily afford the best. Some parents can't afford it at all, and they're stuck not making enough money to be able to qualify for ECAP. But we pay ECAP teachers really well, and so the quality is super high, but only a certain percentage of the population can access that program. So do you see where I'm going? If this were public and the preparation standards were consistent across the board, we could probably have high quality programs accessible to everyone. So you're going to do a discussion about the trilemma at some point, probably next week. So what is a successful education model? You did watch the YouTube video of Finland that I sent in modules or in announcements. Isn't that wild? Who wants to move to Finland? I do. And then some food for thought. What was the most striking about Finland's education system? I think the fact that early childhood education is not compulsory, but it's still offered. So compulsory means readily available and required to everyone. It's not. And children don't have to start school until, what, they're 7? But also parents have the luxury of having paid leave while they're raising their children. So there's just a lot of differences between the socio and economic advantages of folks living in Finland compared to the United States. So if you are interested in a book, here's a recommendation, and it's called The Smartest Kids in the World and How They Got That Way, if you're interested. All right, we made it. That's the end of this presentation. Have a great week, everyone. I'm so glad you're here. Please do reach out to me if you have any questions. I also do want to admit that I am not perfect. Sometimes I might forget to unlock something in modules, or I forget to change a due date. So please bear with me. And I always am very appreciative of emails alerting me to my mistakes. I'm totally open to that. So if you find something, please let me know. I will do my best to make sure that everything is up to date every week, but sometimes I mess up, and I know. So thank you for your kind support. All right, have a great week.